join me in the kitchen, and that's no mistake, for it's in this room that over the past few months I have created and consumed so many of the calories that have contributed to my expanding waistline over the past few months during my injury layoff. It is in fact in this room that I have taken on one of the fundamental properties of a gas, expanding my waistline to fill the space around it in my clothes. And that's why I've come here to the clinic of Graham Price, chartered psychologist, to actually address some of the issues as to why my waistline has expanded so much over the past 4 months. Graham, could you explain for the people watching what it is exactly we're going to be doing today?
Yes, I'm a psychologist, chartered psychologist. I'm a therapist. I use a number of therapies in my work, focusing primarily on something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, which is now very popular and rapidly expanding therapy. I also do some work with hypnotherapy, I do some work with NLP, and I have my own therapy called acceptance action therapy, which I use quite a lot. It's an acceptance-based therapy, which indeed we'd certainly be using in the sort of issues that you're talking about. So it would be a combination of a CBT approach and an AAT, acceptance action therapy approach. So,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. So why don't you tell me very briefly why you're here and what I can help you with?
Okay, it's primarily about my weight and eating and the level of fat that I've managed to accrue over the years.
Okay.
I don't like the shape that I'm in. I don't like the condition that I'm in.
Okay.
It prevents me from doing things that I want to do in my life.
Right.
So I would like to make some changes.
Right. And you're particularly focused on a layer of fat that you say you've acquired around your waist.
The os spare tyre, yeah,
Okay.
and an attendant fairly large backside as well.
A large backside. Okay. So everyone accumulates sort of fat and the results of eating in different places. So,
Yeah.
So that's quite normal. And what about how much do you know about nutrition and therefore what you've been eating that you shouldn't have been eating and what you should do in terms of eating better foods and less of the wrong foods?
Sure. The problems with what I eat, I'm fairly well aware of. I know that I eat too much chocolate.
Right.
Too much milk chocolate. I eat too much by way of things such as white bread in particular.
Right.
So we got sliced white bread, bagels, uncut loaves, things like this.
Okay.
It's those two that are the real big
Chocolate and white bread.
Yeah, and
Okay.
also I eat a lot of cereal as well.
Right.
A lot of refined and processed sugars.
Okay. So you know that chocolate, white flour, or refined flour, and processed sugars are not going to be helpful.
I know they're not good for me. Yeah,
So if I was to say to you, then stop eating.
I crave them.
Aha. Right.
I also
Okay.
overeat
Okay.
a lot.
Okay. So we're talking about these kind of wrong type of foods which you crave,
Yeah.
and also eating too much.
Yes, I eat the right foods otherwise.
All right.
I eat meat, fish, fresh vegetables, and I cook all my own meals.
Right.
Occasionally, I'll have a pizza or something.
Okay.
Occasionally, but otherwise, it's the quantity of food that I eat.
So quantity and the craving for the wrong foods.
Yeah.
So cravings are an interesting thing, aren't they? Because when people desire food or have cravings for food, I mean, craving is kind of, if you like, the word we use for a strong desire. But people want certain foods. People might like chocolate. They might like eating certain things that they're not, they know are not good for them, or they crave those things. And the question is, what do people need to do, if you like, in order to get control over those things? First of all, they need to be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be motivated to achieve the result they want. And it sounds like you are fairly motivated because you've come to see me. So you obviously want to do something about it.
Absolutely.
So that's a good start. So you're motivated and you can see some benefits in achieving those goals. And then they need some sort of self-control mechanism, some way in which they can get control over what they're doing, which is not achieving what they want to achieve. And the key thing about self-control is that most people tend to go through their life allowing their feelings, their desires, their wants, and so on to determine their actions. Not surprisingly. If people have a desire for something, they generally do what they have a desire for. If people have a fear of something, they tend to avoid what it is they're fearful of. If people are feeling low or depressed, they tend to withdraw. If people are feeling angry, they tend to retaliate or lash out in some way. So most people go through life allowing their feelings or their kind of, sometimes their ways of thinking, because desires are a bit of both, aren't they, to determine what they do. And of course often in life that doesn't work, because our desires and wants and feelings and so on, leading us to to our behaviours, aren't working for us in some way. So the question is, how can you get control over that? And what many people believe is that the way to get control over that is to somehow get control over their feelings and their desires and their wants and what's going on inside.
Mm.
And they believe that until they can get control over those things, they can't then change their behaviours.
I feel that.
And that's not a helpful belief. Because the things that are going on inside us, like our feelings and our desires and so on, are not an easy thing to control at all. And indeed, ironically, the best way to get control over them in the long term is to stop trying to get control over them in the short term. Interestingly, when we try and control internal mechanisms like feelings and desires and so on, what tends to happen is that they get worse. So let me give you some examples. If I'm anxious or fearful of something, and I try and get control over that anxiety, or I resist it in some way and try not to feel anxious, I'll generally just feel more anxious. If I'm feeling depressed and I desperately don't want to be depressed and I try desperately to get control over that feeling, I'll just get more depressed about being depressed, because it's really hard to get control directly over a feeling. You can do it through taking substances of some sort, but you can't mentally choose not to feel what you're feeling, to not feel anxious, to not feel low, to not have a desire for something.
Is it the sort of fixation that's part of the problem?
Yeah, it's a fixation. We have an expression that's relevant to a whole lot of things in life, which is called what we resist will persist. And that expression applies more to feelings and desires and wants and internal processes than anything else.